Hello and welcome to Dialogue. The Shenzhou-16 spaceship has successfully docked with the Tiangong space station. With the 3 taikonauts, it's the first manned mission since China's space station was launched for full operation. China also aims to send a crewed mission to the moon by 2030. What's special about the Shenzhou-16 spaceflight mission, and what challenges will China encounter to realize a crewed lunar landing and other lunar explorations? To answer these questions and more, I'm glad to be joined by Dr. Yuguang of the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, Dr. Giuseppe Reibaldi, President of the Moon Village Association in Vienna, and Professor Zhang from Beijing Normal University. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to Dialogue. Dr. Yuguang, we'll start with you here. The Shenzhou-16 spaceship has successfully docked with the space station. So what are the specific tasks for this mission?
Well, the Shenzhou-16 mission is really a very important and very meaningful mission, not only for our manned space program, but also for the China Aerospace. You know that today we are in the what we call the application and the development phase of the Tiangong space station. So the role and also the purpose of this mission will be quite different comparing with the previous missions. Although you know that the T-shaped configuration were formed during the Shenzhou-14 mission, but the construction of the station were accomplished during the Shenzhou-15 mission. So many of the major tasks of the Shenzhou-15 crew is to conducting the construction works. But today it is already in a completely different phase, and the major role I believe that for Shenzhou-16 crew is to conducting scientific research. So this is the right moment for the China Aerospace and our Tiangong space station to have returns to the whole society and to promote the high technology and scientific research of the whole world.
So Professor Zhang, so Shenzhou-16's mission mostly is about in Tiangong space station because it's entered its application and development stage. So it's mostly about science exploration and experiment there.
Right. So the space station is actually a national key laboratory, which means it's a science institution. It is going to be run like a science institution. So scientists from all over the world, they can put in proposals and openly through the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. And then a panel of Chinese experts will evaluate those projects based on the scientific merits, and then the space station will shoulder the up and down going costs, the hosting costs, and then the experimenters will obviously build experiments, share the data, and all that. So this Shenzhou-16 crew, they're the first ones up there to do this kind of the full time up there doing that. The Shenzhou-15 already done some experiments, but their main job is to do that. They will do some additional construction work, but not on the structure, mainly to auxiliary construction for carrying out their experiments on outside of the space station, that sort of thing. But their main job will be to do the experiments themselves.
So probably this is also the long-term, let's say, job. If you talk about the next stage, for example, for the space station, so mostly scientific experiment will be the focus of probably the new missions in the future.
Right. So the design life is 10 years, but usually space projects go beyond their stated lifespan. Let's see how long they can stretch this particular space station. Yeah.
Yuguang, Shenzhou-16 also marks the first flight of the second generation Shenzhou spacecraft. So how is the second generation an improvement over its predecessor?
Well, honestly speaking, since the Shenzhou-10 mission in 2013, we've already formed the standard version of our crew transportation system for the space station program, which means that the specifications of our Shenzhou spaceship do not change much for in this kind of series. And although you know that the Shenzhou-16 is the first one in the new batch of Shenzhou spaceships, it do have some small changes. For instance, the electronic components used on this Shenzhou spaceship we've already achieved about 100% made in China. So this is a really important benchmark of the level of our electronic industry. You know that there are also other improvements. For instance, the interface inside the re-entry capsule makes it easier and more convenient for the astronauts to piloting the ship. So this is also a small improvement. But I should also emphasize that in the future, China will also produce a new generation manned spaceship, which is not only will be used for the transportation of the crew between the ground and station, but also will used on the future potential human missions to the moon.
Yuguang, we have this three-member. We know that, of course, there's a seasoned taikonauts, Jing Haipeng,
Yes.
and then we have the new member, Zhu Yanzhu and Gui Haitao. So this crew, tell us what are the specialties of each member here?
This is really, you know, that's another historical moment for China Aerospace. You know that this is the fourth mission of Mr. Jing Haipeng, and he make another record for China, the fourth flight mission for him. And also this represents that we have more frequently manned activities in outer space. You know that in the years before, especially for the first batch of astronauts, we only have one mission every 2 or even every 3 years. So they do not have much chances for the first batch of astronauts to conduct these kind of flight missions. But you know, for Mr. Jing Haipeng, this has been his fourth mission. So it represents that we have more frequently, we have this kind of manned activities. Every year we have 2 manned spaceships launch. And also, you know, that another thing we made history is that this is the first time we have flight engineer and payload experts in our crew members. And also, all these 2 members are not professional pilots, so they are not chosen from the fighter pilots, and they are, on one hand, they are well qualified. On the other hand, it shows that our Shenzhou spaceship has become more safe and more convenient.
Speak of that, Zhang Fang, you know, the Gui Haitao here, you know, a professor at the Beijing's, you know, top aerospace research institute, is the first Chinese civilian in space. This is a surprising news for a lot of people when they, you know, see that. So, what are the quality or you know, qualification to become a taikonaut? You know, especially for civilian. And I believe, you know, many young people aspire to be one of them to fly to the space station.
Yeah, it's certainly inspiring for a lot of people, right? And especially for young people, that people like them can probably go. But it's still a very strenuous task, and you have to be able to withstand something like 8G in case of emergencies, 5G at the very least, because that's the usual thing that you experience during the launch. And you have to be psychologically really fit. You know, you can't lose it completely when you're sort of detached from everybody else on Earth. But beyond that, you know, the specific tasks for the specific roles, the requirements differ. If you're just a tourist, nobody expects you to do anything, then you know, you certainly need less qualifications. And Professor Gui was able to go, even though he wears glasses, is because he's a payload specialist. If he's a pilot, then probably he wouldn't be able to even get in the program. So as more sort of payload specialist scientists are inducted, so the requirement for that branch of astronauts will probably be even lower in the future, as the whole thing become more automated anyways.
Well, Dr. Reibaldi, so qualification probably will become more lenient in the future. This is maybe the beginning of expanding, I mean, the potential candidates or choices of candidates to fly to space station. You know, do you think this is a trend? You know, previously we have the takonauts mostly from previous pilots, but now it's toward the civilians.
Well, absolutely. I think the trend is to make space available to as many people as possible. So clearly, what is happening in China has been happening also in other countries previously. So the trend is to have civilians involved in space flight. You all know that there is a number of commercial organizations around the world which are starting to offer commercial flight for tourists. So last one, I think, was launched a few days ago. And so I think the future is an increasing number of participants also to experience this environment. You see, to have the Earth beyond, to see the Earth from space is a unique experience with the overview effect that everybody will like to experience. So the Chinese space station is a very important milestone because it's a compact space station and is very close to what a commercial space station, even from China, will appear. And so commercial space station is coming beyond the government space station. As you know, the International Space Station is going to conclude its activity in few years. And after that, there will be commercial space station in low Earth orbit. And China has presently the space station for, as been said earlier, about at least 10 years or more. And I'm sure that there will be also commercial space station. So yes, the trend is more and more people will experience spaceflight.
Then, I mean, what's the significance of increasingly, say, becoming commercial or commercialized for part of the activities, Doctor?
Well, the advantage is first that at the moment, the government is the unique market for the industry. So it's like you have a car which has got only one customer. Of course, if you produce more cars, of course, you can produce more cars because there is more customers. So the creation of a low Earth orbit, let's say, civilian, let's say, space flight, it is a huge market. So this will help to have more industry involved in this activity and create a number of other applications. Just like when we had the first satellite, nobody was thinking that there would be commercial application. When in '57 we had the first Sputnik satellite, nobody would imagine how big the market of the space is. Well, we are going to have something similar also for commercial utilization of space stations as well as activity towards the moon.
Dr. Reibaldi, it's been 10 years since China launched successfully its first manned mission to the space station. So I wonder, how do you characterize, how do you, help people outside China understand the development of the past 10 years?
Well, I think all the world is, of course, appreciating and considering highly the China development. China, of course, has started a bit later than other countries because you have to reach a certain level of technology development, which, of course, China has reached. And so that's the reason why we see an increased number of missions, very successful missions. So China is a major player in the space activity. What is important is that this relevance and the infrastructure which China has are known also to people outside China. I believe, like on the International Space Station, the crew has discussion and conversation with everybody around the world. It will be very helpful if also the Chinese crew, not this one, in the future, will able to communicate with other people outside China. China has an international cooperation program, as been said earlier, at the level of astronaut as well as of experiment via the United Nations Office of Outer Space, which is, of course, an excellent initiative, as has been described. However, the public at the moment is very little aware outside China of the space station. Very often people ask, does China has a space station? I say, yes, of course, China has a space station which is up and running. Nobody knows. So I think the communication, I think is important for the Chinese space station to be explained.
Better communication, and hopefully more people will have more knowledge about the development of the Chinese space station. Yuguang, back to this new crew for Shenzhou-16, and of course, after docking, they are going to have a handover procedure. Basically, the crew of Shenzhou-15 will leave the station and they will do handover of the operation to the Shenzhou-16. So people are curious about, what does the handover entail?
Usually we can categorize the handover in two aspects. One is the maintenance and operation of the station itself. Usually it is not easy for 3 or 6 people to stay in outer space because the outer space is hazardous, is dangerous, is risky. So the environmental control and the life support system will be a very important factor for us to stay in outer space. Moreover, you see that the Tiangong space station is a very huge combination with 5 to 6 spacecrafts combining together. So every system must be integrated together. For instance, the attitude control, the orbital control, the communications, the thermal control, and so on. So this kind of maintenance work is a daily routine of the crew member there. So face-to-face handover will ensure the efficiency and also even the safety of the next crew. So it is very, very important. And the second aspect is the scientific research. You know that with the completion of the construction of our Tiangong space station, there are more and more and more wider and wider the scope of the scientific research. So some of the experiments will last for a long period, so it cannot be accomplished in the stay period of one crew. So it is very necessary for them to have a face-to-face handover of the certain and very complicated scientific research. So that is the reason why we conduct this. And I should also emphasize, it has already formed the tradition in the space capable nations many years before. So it is the right time for China to do this also.
Part of the job. Professor Zhang Fan, the new crew, they are expected to have to bring with them actually a new expansion for the space station. Earlier you mentioned about this T-shaped basic space station. They will make it across. So I wonder, how difficult is it probably to add a new module to the existing space station now?
Not too difficult, actually. So all the 3 modules, they would have backup copies on the ground, ready for modifications and improvements. So the first step. So there's been a talk of phase 2 expansion of the entire space station to double the size. That means add 3 more modules onto it. So this will be the first one. It will be another copy essentially of a core module that would take with it another docking sort of module onto which the spherical thing onto which you can add additional lab modules. So the cross shape would just be the first step of the phase 2 expansion. I would expect more to come afterwards. The whole thing works like a Lego. You can keep playing the game and make it even bigger if the need arises.
How much do we know about the function of this new module?
They haven't given any details, so I probably shouldn't speculate too much. But I would expect it to be improved upon from that backup module of the core module. The Tianhe's backup, yeah.
Yeah, Tianhe backup. Of course, I mean, as time goes on, we will know more and more. It will be open to the public, and Dr. Reibaldi, China also plans to achieve, let's say, lunar landing by 2030. But 7 years to go. It seems not a long period of time. I wonder, what's your take? How significant is that, or the plan, to achieve such a mission in 7 years?
Well, I think we welcome the news, which is been official yesterday, as far as I understand. I think everybody was expecting to have this announcement. We had it. So I think China is a very important player for the lunar exploration, has made several very high technology, very challenging missions in the last few years, and is planning more. They have also basically announced the setting up of the International Lunar Research Station on the moon. So the logical step was the announcement of humans on the surface of the moon. So therefore, we are very much welcome. This open even more the urgency of a dialogue on how to behave on the moon and around the moon. And that I think this is one of the topic, if you wish, that we can discuss later. But I think this announcement is very important. It is finally waiting for this announcement. Now we know that the Chinese tachyonaut will be on the surface of the moon in 7 years. And as you said, is not a long time, but China has, as we can discuss later, key technology already.
The key technology. Speak of that, Yuguang. Of course, there are all clear objectives. What will be achieved before 2030? They talked about the technologies like a crewed round-trip travel, short-term habitation on the lunar surface, and of course, human and machine joint exploration. I mean, how challenging is it to achieve such a technological breakthrough?
Well, this is really very exciting news for us. Mr. Lin Xijiang announced yesterday that we will walk on the moon before 2030. Actually speaking, we will already have a very good preparation for that. You see that we need a new launch vehicle much more powerful than before, the Long March 10. But you know that the Long March 10 has many technologies adopted already on the Long March 5 series. For instance, the 5-meter diameter. So the core stage and the two side boosters of the Long March 10 will also adopt the diameter of 5 meters. So all the infrastructures almost can be used in the Long March 5, can be used in this Long March 10 missions. And also, you know that we already have very practical experience in using the 120-ton level thruster called YF-100. We've already improved this model, and it is smaller. So it is possible, you know, that to mount 7 these kind of engines in the 5-meter diameter fuselage. So the thrust will be very big, and the liftoff mass will be more than 2,100 tons. So you can see that we already have very good preparation for the new launch vehicle, and the capability of this launch vehicle can reach to about 27 tons to translunar orbit. And also, you know that in 2020, during the maiden flight of our Long March 2B, we have a test vehicle of the new generation manned spaceship. So this is also potentially used in the future manned missions to the moon. Moreover, you see that during the Chang'e 5 lunar sample return mission, we've already mastered the technology of the lunar orbit rendezvous and docking. Especially, it is a manned automatic docking. So this is a very important step for us for the future preparation of the human missions to the moon.
Yeah, some preparation over there.
Yes.
And Dr. Reibaldi, you mentioned about importance of international cooperation. We know that the U.S. is going back to the moon by the end of 2025. Do you see there are any chance for the two countries, China and the U.S., of course, and other countries, to work together to jointly explore the moon?
Absolutely. I think this is personally also our organization, the Moon Village Association, is trying to support. That is basically the moon is not of any specific country, is of humanity. United States have started with the Artemis program to have also a number of countries joining. China and Russia has their own program, which is all fine. What is important is that all these stakeholders talk to each other and have a place where they can communicate in order to agree how to behave on the moon. And this is exactly what we are trying to bring as an organization, as an association, to the United Nations. The United Nations is the hub for this discussion. Next week, actually this week, we have the COPOS, which is the plenary meeting where all space countries, which is about 105, they meet in Vienna. And these are the kind of discussion that we're going to have, how to coordinate in an international way, basically lunar activity. We need to avoid mistake which we made on Earth, like debris generation. We do not want to create a lot of debris around the moon. Situation is even complex, more complex than on Earth, because there is no atmosphere. So there is a lot of technical details which needs to be discussed directly by the different stakeholders like United States and China. And of course, the United Nations is the right place to have this discussion. So we hope that this is going to take place at the latest by next year, where hopefully a mechanism, a platform for exchanging information and coming to common understanding of how to behave on the moon will be realized.
Dr. Reibaldi, you mentioned about how to behave on the moon. Obviously, it seems like you have concerns about what kind of activities there might be, or probably not that productive in terms of exploration. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I think everybody has good intention going forward to the moon. But unfortunately, or fortunately, the moon has a number of limited places which are extremely valuable, like in particular the South Pole. So I think what we need to make sure that everybody can perform their own mission without creating problem to others, not because they want to, but because let's say the environment on the moon is such that even landing 10 kilometers away from each other, there can be a problem. There can be damage, what is called basically safety zone. So I think that is what I'm referring. So I'm referring to the fact that everybody has good intention by definition, but they need to talk to each other in order to inform when they are going to go there, where they're going to be, so that maybe even operations of some of the different activity can be stopped while other people are arriving. And so I think these are the kind of mechanism that we need to put in place: exchange of information, notification, and in particular also related to telecommunication. Right now, there is no unified system to communicate between the Artemis program and other programs which will take place on the moon. And the moon is a very hostile place, and we need to be able to help each other, like on the sea. So all of these issues do require, they are not coming on their own. So they need to be progressed, and the United Nations is the best place to do it.
Yes.
And that is what we really need to achieve.
Yes, some regulation, for all the players to follow. There's also another concern, probably, Zhang, there's talk about potential, say, a space race, in particular between the U.S. and China. I wonder, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's used for.
Professor Zhang, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think it's a used for excuse for some people. I mean, a famous person even today mentioned that China's program is more advanced than people thought. I mean, it's fair. It's fair. Maybe it's a true thing to say. But obviously, people suspect that there's also alternative motive. Thinking, by saying this, Americans would be whipped into supporting their project more. But for a race to happen, you need both sides to engage with each other. Right now, it's only the U.S. considering China a threat in this respect. China has never really. If you look at the time schedule, U.S. the Artemis is going 2026 or something like that, and China, even with its brought forward schedule is 2030. It's still after the U.S. And even if China goes there, first this time, the U.S. has already been there way before. So there's really no bragging right, no vanity issue here for China. It's just going at its own pace according to its technology capabilities. So while people will still talk about this space race for their own benefit, I don't think this is a real thing that will happen.
At least from the Chinese perspective, China is not competing with any other country. It's simply following its schedule, right, Zhang?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. Thank you for being with us. I'm Giuseppe. See you next time.